T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
Hey everybody! It's that time of the week again. It's 7 o'clock. This show is being brought to you by the number 3, season 3, episode 3. It's time for your poem of the week. Coming to you live from the Jim Alberti Theater, right slap dab in the middle of Peacock Blue Studios. Hey Rachel, would you say we're slap dab in the middle of the studio?
Slap dab, baby.
We are here live in Austin, Texas, where we are keeping it weird. Because Hunter S. Thompson said when the going gets weird, weird turn pro. Hear, hear. Hear, hear. It's time for your fun Texas back. San Antonio, Texas has the Hertzberg Circus Museum, which has the world's largest assortment of circusana in America, and I have never been there. Hey Rachel, we should go to the Hertzberg Circus Museum sometime.
Yeah!
Everybody pull up a chair, there's plenty of seats right up front. And hit the love button. Go ahead and hit the love button, it will come back to you in infinity. Don't hit the anger button though, we got plenty of that in this world. If you can afford to support me or this broadcast, you can do so at paypal.com/BallChandler, at Venmo.com, The Chris Chandler Show, or if you can be a continuing contributor, you can do so at Patreon.com, The Chris Chandler Show. Hey Rachel, you should probably hit pause on that at the end of the song. I didn't get through my whole dialogue in one song. We've been listening to Pete Weiss and the Weisternauts. Hang around for your moment of spin. After the poem of the week, we will have your your moment of spin. And I have a special announcement today. That's right. This poem is going to have a little bit of language in it. I don't usually use blue language, but every now and then I got to, because no other word will do. And in this case, it is a statement of fact. So there you have your parental advisory. You guys up for a story? Go ahead and say it. Type it out on the keyboard. I have carefully selected this little tale of adventure because a couple of days ago, the 22nd, happy fall everybody, was the equinox. And I was unpacking boxes here in my still relatively new home in Austin, Texas, and I came across this business card from when I was in the 9th grade. It was made for me as a gift from my older brother, Frank, to encourage me with my passion for stage lighting. You may not know this about me, but before I hit the road as a stand-up poet, I had dropped out of high school to go out on the road running lights for punk rock bands. I am very proud to say that every nickel I have ever made in my life has been on or around the stage. But this story isn't about me or my brother Frank. It's about the greatest rock and roll band to never make the bigs. And this is how it started. When I was 13, there was this band, a garage band, average age of about 16, and they practiced up the street. They were called Pythagoras. And I wanted to hang out with them. But you got to keep in mind here that the difference between a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old is great. So I had to create an excuse, a reason. And as a skinny, hyperactive 13-year-old, I devised a plan to hang out in the basement with Pythagoras. You see, it was around Christmas. And in my juvenile delinquent wisdom, I would become the light man. And I went through the suburbs and stole the Christmas lights in 3 upscale subdivisions. I was sort of a blonde-haired juvenile delinquent Grinch stealing Christmas so that rock and roll could live forever, at least in the basements of Stone Mountain, Georgia. And you see, I proceeded to take those Christmas lights into my high school shop class and built a light show. And soon, every garage band in Redan High School could not consider throwing a keg party without first contacting the light man. But as it turned out, fate would soon turn to destiny, and the bass player for one of those bands I worked with had an older brother in a bona fide bar band called the Weasels. So at the age of 15, I made a fake ID out of my learner's license, and I got a job with the Weasels, and soon another band called the Satellites. But the Weasels were the greatest. Yes, the greatest rock and roll band to never make the bigs. The singer-songwriter was called Fishman, and he was my mentor, writing songs like I Had a UFO Baby and Born Too Late to Be a Biblical Hero. Led my people to the promised land, wrote out the papers for that black Trans Am. Promised land grocery. I got my own shopping cart. I stole it from the supermart. They were the masters of stage antics. Even voted the worst band on the planet Earth by an Athens, Georgia newspaper. They filled an Athens nightclub after that distinction. And there was the time they opened up for the LA punk band X, still one of the greatest of all time. They cooked burgers on stage and then served them to the audience during the song Martin the Burger Boy. There was the original Bowling for Beers and the Weasels Wheel of Fortune, where you could win a new car. One Easter, the Easter Weasel came and led an Easter egg hunt in a singles bar. And I remember one time there weren't enough people in the audience, so they put together a Nerf baseball game with the members of the audience. Betsy Driscoll hit a home run that night. But the best was when they were mentioned in a huge write-up in the Atlanta Arts Weekly known as Creative Loafing, because they managed to get a job opening for a Detroit soul review called The Threshold of Soul, and it was a sellout. The article read, Detroit Soul Band coming to Atlanta, obscure novelty act to open. And the Weasels got up and played an average set to a patient crowd. But when it was over, they went into the dressing room and changed their clothes, and they came back out on stage and played songs like Going to a Go-Go and Sad, Sad Day. They were the threshold of soul, always were. There never was a threshold of soul. They managed to dupe everyone, and no one wanted their money back. And Fishman remains my hero. The Rolling Stones recorded Going to a Go-Go a few years later, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I am getting ahead of myself. These mistaken identity gags would soon come back to haunt them, because they got their biggest gig ever, opening up for, I am not making this up, opening up for Alice Cooper at the Tennessee State Fair. Now this was 1981, the summer before my senior year of high school. And if you were old enough to have been around in those days, you may remember that in that same summer, the Rolling Stones were also touring America with considerably more media attention than the Weasels. You may also remember that as a publicity stunt, the Stones were, in their off time, going to obscure rock bands in small cities and booking themselves under assumed names such as the Wannabes and, more often, the Cocksuckers. Now, I don't know exactly how many times they did this, but it made big headlines. And at the time, the coolest thing you could say was that you had accidentally caught the Rolling Stones in some out-of-the-way bar. Well, ticket sales at the Tennessee State Fair were not exactly going well. I guess someone had overestimated the power of Alice Cooper's last hit of his career, a song called Clones. Remember that one? See what I mean? Anyway, the gig came out of nowhere by an odd phone call from someone we never met, a man photographed, but never photographed, but soon to be quoted in the newspaper by the name of, I am not making this up either, J.C. Goforth. And shortly after the Weasels accepted the gig, a rumor was started by a one J.C. Goforth that the Rolling Stones were going to appear at the Tennessee State Fair, opening up for Alice Cooper under the name, you guessed it, the Weasels. All of the major media picked up on it. They had gone as far as renting hotel rooms under the name the Rolling Stones. Local news interviewed caterers bringing food up to the room of the Stones. All the major commercial radio stations played nothing but Rolling Stones all week. There was a banner front page headline that read, "Will the Rolling Stones play the State Fair?" I still have a copy of that article. Alice Cooper himself was interviewed in it saying, if Mick doesn't show up, he meant he was chicken. Now, I have heard Mick Jagger compared to a chicken before, but never in that context. They changed the venue from a stadium to a raceway, which is much larger. And when we got to the venue, there were vendors hawking Rolling Stone t-shirts. People had been camping out for days. In the massive parking lot behind the stage, there were 5 separate mobile homes, each one with magic marker signs that said Mick, Keith, Charlie, Bill, Ronnie. The Weasels changed their clothes in Fishman's van. Hell, we thought the Rolling Stones were going to show up, and the place was packed. Sold out, oversold, everyone in Rolling Stones t-shirts. People held up banner signs reading, "Welcome Rolling Stones." Uniformed, armed, Tennessee state troopers led me to the light board. I have never before or since seen so many people in uniform claiming to be on my side. People from the audience yelled up, "Are you the Stones sound man?" No, I thought. I'm the Weasels light man. And anticipation was at a full fury. There was no one on stage yet, but the audience chant was deafening. Stones, 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 Stones. Even to the point of the intro, a lonely DJ walked out on stage. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, gentlemen, gentlemen. Welcome to the Tennessee State Fair, 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 fair. The chant subsided, but the silence only amplified the anticipation, and all ears were on the lonely DJ. Tonight we have Alice Cooper, the chants resumed. Stones, 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 the Weasels. The crowd goes nuts, and in a very ominous voice, and who knows what else? Crowd climbing on top of each other. Please welcome the Weasels. There were bottle rockets, Roman candles going off, women baring their breasts, and out walked a novelty act from Atlanta. Now, you have to understand here that this was a very large crowd. And it takes a few minutes for the people to figure it all out. Some cheered. Some looked at each other dumbfoundedly. That's not the Stones. In fact, it took about a half a song for the full wave of anger to hit the crowd. And the Weasels had carefully selected from their repertoire to open with a song called Dead by Christmas, and they had no idea how prophetic that song would be. The song also has the distinction of having a guitar break follow the first chorus, and Hot Rod Rake was ready, and he stepped down stage. And I was too. I was in the follow spot booth. Follow spot number 1, stand by in frame 2 to hit performer 3 on my go, down center. Dead by Christmas, follow spot 1, go. Now I suspected at the time, and Hot Rod Rake later confirmed, that the first item to be thrown at the stage was just a piece of ice. But it was the way that sparkling piece of ice entered the cone of light, illuminating Hot Rod Rake, reflecting a perfect rainbow back onto the audience. It hit him square in the chest. And at that exact instance, the whole audience realized simultaneously, like the 101st monkey, that they had all been duped. Next was cups, cans, bottles, folding chairs. They were lucky there was no gunplay. It was Tennessee. As a lark, the Weasels had put Street Fighting Man on their set list just in case. Fishman pointed to it. Franco F. Woyd shook his head no, and the Weasels lived to tell the tale. What can a poor boy do except to sing for a rock and roll band? You can't always get what you want, but if you try sometimes, you just might find you can't always get what you want. Alice Cooper played to a half house. Mick Jagger, it turned out, was chicken. The Weasels actually got a favorable review out of sympathy, I'm sure. They were asked in the interview after the show, "Have you ever billed yourselves as the Rolling Stones before?" Fishman replied, "No, but it would help record sales." Fishman remains my hero. As for me, I continued to work for the Weasels for several years. I also worked for that other band I mentioned, the Satellites, for about 5 years, all told. But I quit the group 3 weeks before they got to their record deal, changed their name to the Georgia Satellites, had a #3 hit called Keep Your Hands to Yourself. A few years later, I was on the road in my own right, this time as a performer. And I don't regret my choices. I could not have made it if had I stayed in high school and not learned from the best, Fishman and the Weasels, who were the greatest rock and roll band to never make the bigs. There you have your poem of the week. Hang around for your moment of spin. Hey, thanks a lot for hanging out. Give me a number between 1 and 3. I know it takes you a second. I can't read the screen today. Do we have anybody?
Number 3.
Got number 3. This time it is observations from a 24-hour laundromat. Give me a number between 1 and 135. Do we have a number there?
111.
111. Who's that from?
Thomas M. Newell.
Hey, Video Blue. 111. 111. Ding, ding, ding. We have a winner. And turn in your hymnal to page 111. Though I stand on the shoulders of giants, I'm still an ant. Thank you for gathering around today. This has been your Poem of the Week. Episode 3, Season 3. We'll see you next Tuesday at 7 o'clock. So long, everybody.